Okay. So welcome Dr. Sridhar sir. Good afternoon. Welcome Dr. Karthik Prabhu sir.
Good afternoon, Anand. Good afternoon.
Are you able to hear me?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Anand sir. We are able to hear you.
Sir, am I audible, Karthik Prabhu sir?
Yes, sir. You are very much audible, sir.
But I am not receiving your.
Sir, am I audible, sir?
Karthi is audible to me. Sridhar.
You are audible to me too. I can hear Anand Chokalingam, sir, but I think he is not able to hear me.
Yeah.
Bhavadharani, madam. Hello. Yes, sir. Manoran, sir. Sir, I am audible, sir. Mithavangala Anand sir is not audible. RMK, sir. ஆனந்த் சார் கேக்குதா? நீங்க மியூட்ல இருக்கீங்க. I think Vijaykumar sir or Santosh?
Sir, கேக்குதுங்க சார்.
கேக்குது இல்ல இது
செந்தில் இப்ப கார்த்திக் பிரபு சார் இப்ப கேக்குதா?
எனக்கு கேக்குதுங்க சார்.
Yes yes. Okay.
Hello
Sir, Sridhar sir join பண்ணிருக்காரு. செங்குட்டுவன் சாரும் அபுலசன் சார் இன்னும் வரல.
மேடம் வந்துட்டீங்களா மேடம்?
வந்துருச்சு.
செந்தில் சார்.
சார் குட் ஈவினிங் சார்.
செந்தில் சார் இன்னும் உங்களுக்கு செக்ரட்டரி சிஜிபினே உங்க பேர் வந்துட்டு இருக்கு.
ஐயோ இல்ல மாத்த இருக்கு. நான் மாத்திறேன் சார். எஸ் சார்.
செந்தில் ஸ்ரீதர் சாரும் ஜாயின் பண்ணிருக்காரு.
ஓகேங்க சார். பிரசிடென்ட் சார்
பிரசிடென்ட் சார் மட்டும் எங்கேயோ மேரேஜுக்கு போயிட்டு வரேன்னா நடுவில் நிப்பா எடுக்கனா இன்னும் ஒன்னும் சார் இன்னும் இது பண்ணல.
Sri Harishar from Vijayawada. Good evening.
Oh, great, madam.
Good evening, madam.
சார் கார்த்திக் சார் நம்ம ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிட்டு இடையில பிரசிடென்ட் சார் வரும்போது நம்ம ஜாயின் பண்ணிக்கலாமாங்க சார்? எப்படிங்க சார்?
நோ ப்ராப்ளம் சார். நீங்க கால் பண்ணி பாத்துட்டீங்கல்ல?
ஆனந்த் சார் நீங்க சார் எவ்வளவு நேரம் சொன்னாருங்க சார்? எவ்வளவு நேரம் கேளுங்க சார். நம்மளுக்கு எனிவே 15 மினிட்ஸ் இனாகுரேஷன் இருக்கும்போது அதுக்குள்ள ஜாயின் பண்ணிக்கலாம்.
ஒரு தடவை கால் பண்ணி அவர்கிட்ட ஒரு பர்மிஷன் வாங்கிக்கோங்க. சார் நாங்க ப்ரொசீட் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கோம், நீங்க ஜாயின் பண்ணிக்கிறீங்களா சார்னு ஒரு வார்த்தை பேசு.
ஓகே சார், நான் பேசிட்டு வரேன் சார்.
சார் நான் அடிச்சிட்டு இருக்கேன் சார்.
நீங்க அடிக்கிறீங்களா சார்?
ஆமா சார், கால் பண்றேன். அது பவதாரணி மேடம், உங்க பேக்ரவுண்ட்ல பிக்சர்ஸ் வந்து ரொம்ப நல்லா இருக்கு மேடம். பெரிய வால் பிக்சர்
இது சார் எப்பவுமே இருக்கும். ஸ்கிரீன் பிஹைண்ட்.
ஓகே ஓகே. ஓ இது உங்க விண்டோ ஸ்கிரீனா அது?
இல்ல, இட்ஸ் ஆன் தி வால்.
வால். ஓகே ஓகே. வால்பேப்பர் மாதிரி போட்டுருக்கீங்க.
ஆமாங்க சார்.
நல்லா இருக்கு. அதான் இந்த மேரேஜஸ் எல்லாம் பின்னாடி ஒரு பெரிய பேக்ட்ராப் வச்சிருக்க மாதிரி நல்லா இருக்கு. சுதாகர் சார்.
பவதாரணி மேடம், ஸ்பீக்கர்ஸ் எல்லாரும் வந்துட்டாங்களா மேடம்?
சார் நான் இருக்கேன், ஸ்ரீஹரி சார் இருக்காரு.
சரிங்க மேடம். அப்ப நம்ம
ரெண்டு பேர் இருக்கோம்.
பிரசிடென்ட் உள்ள வந்தாரு.
மது சார் அடுத்து ஜாயின் பண்ணிக்குவாரு.
ஓகே ஓகே மேடம்.
மது சாரும் சிவகடாட்சம் சாரும்.
ஓகே மேடம். ஓகே மேடம்.
ஆனந்த் சார் பிரசிடென்ட் உள்ள வந்துட்டாரு. அவருக்கு அன்மியூட் ஆகலன்னு நினைக்கிறேன்.
பிரசிடென்ட் சார் வந்தாருன்னா நம்ம ஸ்டார்ட்
பண்ணலாம். உள்ள வந்துட்டாரு. ஐ கேன் see him. வீடியோ தெரியுது. ஆடியோ ப்ராபபிலி அவருக்கு அன்மியூட் யாராவது.
சார் பிரசிடென்ட் சார் வந்துட்டாரு சார். எஸ் சார்.
அத அவர் அன்மியூட் பண்ண சொல்லி மட்டும் கொஞ்சம். அவர் ட்ரை
Right.
பண்ற போல் இருக்கு.
Good evening, everybody.
வந்துட்டார்.
Good
Good
evening,
evening,
sir.
sir.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Bhavadaran madam.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, sir.
ஸ்ரீதர் சார், நீங்க என்ன வீடியோவை டிராக்குள்ள வச்சிருக்கிற மாதிரி இருக்கு, கல்லாப்பொட்டி டிராக்குள்ள வீடியோ வச்சிருக்க மாதிரி கீழே இருக்க மாதிரி இருக்கு.
யார சொல்றீங்க?
கையில எடுத்துட்டேன்.
கையில எடுத்து
Good evening,
தொப்பை
Sridhar.
மட்டும் தெரிஞ்சதாகும். தொப்பை மட்டும் தெரிஞ்சு ஆனா
நான் அதை
நான்
சொல்ல விரும்பல, அதனால கல்லாப்பொட்டி டிரால வச்சிருக்கீங்களோன்னு கேட்டேன். வேற ஒண்ணும் இல்ல.
சரி, எல்லாரும்
Anand sir,
வரட்டும், wait
start
பண்ணிட்டு.
பண்ணிடலாங்க sir.
ஆமா. எஸ் சார், எஸ் சார்.
Sir, can I start the proceedings?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So, good afternoon, esteemed most respected President, the State Secretary, the President-elect Dr. Sridhar sir, and all the speakers under the leadership of Dr. Bhavadaran madam, our coordinator for the HCD course. I would like to welcome you all at the outset for this CME on diabetes and also the inauguration of the this year's batch of the Fellowship in Clinical Diabetology certificate course. I request our office bearer of the IMA CGP, Dr. Suresh sir, to give his IMA prayer and physician prayer. Suresh sir, are you online?
Sir, sir. சொல்லுங்க சார்.
சார் லைன்ல தான் சார் இருக்கேன்.
சுரேஷ், நீங்க physician prayer, IMA prayer, physician prayer சொல்லுங்க சுரேஷ்.
ஒரு நிமிஷம் சார். Please, sir. Dear sister, please admit. Yeah, of put a family friend at the lady.
சுரேஷ் இருக்கா, உங்கள்ட்ட இருக்கா, நான் சொல்லவா?
சார் இந்த ஒரு நிமிஷம் சார். Hello.
Yes sir.
Sir, am I audible, sir? Physician prayer. Dear Lord, though great physician, I kneel before thee, since every good and perfect gift must come from thee. I pray, give skill to my hands, clear vision to my mind, kindness and sympathy to my heart. Give singleness of purpose, strength to life, at least a part of the burden of my sufferings, fellow men, and a true realization of the rare privilege that is mine. Take from my heart all ill and worldliness. With the simple faith of a child, I rely on thee. என்ன சில்லற வேணும்?
சுரேஷ், நீங்க physician prayer சொல்லிருங்க சுரேஷ்.
எல்லாம் வல்ல இறைவா, உலகில் சிறந்த மருத்துவன் நீயே, உன்னை மண்டியிட்டு வணங்குகிறேன். உன்னிடமிருந்து நல்லதும் சிறந்ததும் என்னை அடைய பிரார்த்திக்கின்றேன். எனது கரங்களுக்கு திறமையை தாரும், எனது மனத்திற்கு தெளிவான பார்வையை தாரும், இதயத்திற்கு இரக்கத்தினையும் கனிமையும் தாரும். எனக்கு அளிக்கப்பட்ட சிறப்பு தகுதியை தக்க வைக்கும் எண்ணம் வாடும் மக்கள் படும் பாட்டினை சிறிதளவாவது போக்கிட ஒன்றுபட்ட எண்ணத்தையும் வலிமையும் தாரும். என் எண்ணத்திலிருந்து தகாத எண்ணங்களையும் உலகளவு ஆசையையும் அறவே ஒதுக்கி பணி செய்து அருளுமாறு குழந்தை போன்று உன்னை சார்ந்து வேண்டுகிறேன்.
Thank you, Dr. Suresh. Thank you for the physician IMA prayer. Now I would request Dr. Sendil, our chairman of studies of CGP, to give his welcome address. Dr. Sendil, sir.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I welcome all our members, our state president, Dr. Sengituvan sir, our past president, Dr. Abul sir, state president-elect, Dr. Sridhar sir, honorary state secretary, Dr. Karthik Prabhu sir, finance secretary, Dr. Gauri Shankar sir, and all star speakers for the day, Dr. Bhavadani madam, Dr. Madhu Perisami, Dr. Srihari, Dr. N. Sivakakdaksham, to this wonderful CME and fellowship course inauguration by our state president. Diabetology course, as every year, it is most demandful course, and this year also we have a good number of people joined, and we expect some more people to join in the next 1 or 2 weeks. And as mentioned earlier, and also in the course highlights, so this fellowship course is for knowledge and for our day-to-day practice. This can be displayed, this cannot be displayed in the prescription. So I request all the members. join the course as well as make use of this wonderful CME program. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sendil, for your brief welcome address. Now, I request our Honorable, most respected President, Dr. Sengutuvan, sir, to give his words of felicitation. Sir.
Good evening, everybody. Respected past President, Dr. Abdul Hassan, respected President-elect, Dr. Sridhar, my Honorary Secretary, Dr. Sridhar, Karthik Prabhu, and Finance Secretary, Dr. Gauri Shankar, Chairman, Director, CGP Studies, Sendil Kumar, Secretary, Dr. Anand Chokalingam, and speakers, Dr. Bavadarani, Dr. Madhu Swami, Dr. Srihari, and Dr. Sivakaracham, and almost the CGP is entering into the academic activities very seriously and making all the delegates to learn about the practices in diabetes. Today, the diabetes complicating events are going, and I request all the delegates to adhere and enlighten your knowledge. And CGP is doing a wonderful job during this period, and I expect next time they are going to open the neurology chapter April month, I think so. So with these few words, thanks for the giving opportunity. Over to Dr. Anand Chokalingam.
Thank you, sir, for your very kind words. Now I request our Honorable State Secretary, Dr. Karthik Prabhu, sir, to give his words of felicitations. Dr. Karthik, sir.
Thank you, Anand, sir. Most respected President, immediate past President, sir, President-elect, sir, and all leaders of Chairman, Secretary, CGP, and especially all the speakers and the course faculty of our diabetology course. Good evening, everybody. I'm very proud and happy to say that I've been part of this course and a student of Bavadarani Madam. So this course is a lifeline for many of the MBBS doctors, general practitioners to empower themselves in more scientific, rational in treatment. Because as an MBBS doctor, we can treat all the patients, but to treat them in a more scientific way, IMA has taken this initiative, and this course has been extremely successful, and not only because of IMA, but because of the faculties and their interest shown. We are very grateful to them, and we hope that we'll empower them with much better and latest knowledge and updates. But also a word of caution, please do not use the term consultant and get into trouble. That is the only thing that we have to do, because knowledge is for everyone to be shared, but we should also watch what is legal. And with this, I thank for the opportunity and best wishes for this program. And I'm sure our Dr. Sendil sir and Anand sir are doing a wonderful job. And then I pay more than 200 people and all are adding நிறைய CMEs பண்றீங்க, நல்லா பண்றீங்க. It's very trendy. Thank you, sir. Good day, one and all. Thank you. Bye.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Karthik Prabhu, sir, for your kind words. And as part of the routine customary, I would like to give the Secretary's address. So last year, one of the most successful courses in this CGP fellowship was diabetology, where around 79 people joined or enrolled and finished successfully the course. And this year, today is the inaugural CME, and also the first, maybe the online class, so we can consider it that way. And till now, it is 47 people have already joined the course. And after the CME, I think the people, the doctors who are attending the course will know the importance of this course and the significance and the quality of the academic work being carried out by the faculties of this course. So I would request the doctors who are attending the course to join in large numbers so that you can get benefited for your thing. So that is a very that's a very kind of the faculties, so that you can have a very good idea. And next, as our President Sengutuvan sir was addressing, his vision was to start a course for the general practitioners for neurology, particularly an office-based neurology course. So what we did was, we have come up with a schedule, and we have worked out very good faculties, 4 neurologists and 1 ENT surgeon in that. And we have come up with a very good online class and direct contact class also. So while this is being done, so we can start the course in the due course. So hopefully, but mid-April or the first week of April, we'll be starting that course. So I think that will be of a real great help for the all general practitioners who face a lot of difficulties in treating neurological cases. And as our chairman was addressing, this is not a additional degree. So we make it very specific in the joining brochure itself that this cannot be added as an advantage in the in your degree board, or it is not legally valid if anything happens out of these things. So kindly you make use of the scientific knowledge you gain in encouraging and developing your general practice. So these few words I would like to conclude my opening remarks. And I would also like to make a mention of the faculty here under the leadership of Dr. Bhavadarani Madam. So whoever have joined this course, they are very much appreciative of the faculty and the content being given in the course, so which has uplifted their practice to a great extent. So I would like to place on record the thanks for our coordinators for this fellowship in clinical diabetology course. Thank you, madam. And now I request our President-elect Dr. Sridhar sir to give his words of felicitation. And he is the right person who can give a good felicitation, because he was actually the secretary of or chairman of CGP of both national and state level. Sir Sridhar sir, are you online?
I am online.
Sir, we welcome Abul sir also. Sir has also joined, sir. Yes, sir.
Abul sir has come. Yes, sir.
சரி, நான் பேசுவேன், அபுல பேச சொல்லுவா. நான் பேசிடுவா.
நீங்க பேசுங்க சார், அடுத்து.
Yes, sir.
நான் முதல்ல பேசிடவா?
பேசு.
Thank you. நான் பண்ண தப்புலாம் நீ திருத்து பின்னாடி. Most respected President Sengutu Anna, my dear Abul Bhai, our Honorary Secretary Karthik, Treasurer Gauri Shankar, the team of IMS CGP, ably led by Dr. Sendil Kumar, Dr. Anand, Dr. Suresh Kumar, and the whole team. The excellent faculty about to begin the teaching in diabetology, led by Dr. Bhavadarani Madam. It's a great day for CGP because diabetology had always been the crown jewel. It is called the crown jewel of CGP, always drawing the maximum number of participants. Right from the day it was conceived till date, we have drawn the maximum crowd for this particular course. And it more so because the India needs the GPs to have an in-depth knowledge of diabetes, because now more than 40% of the general population are either diabetic or pro-diabetic. So I think this has to be continued every year, and new batches learning the art without exhibiting it in their degree, as already explained by the chairman and secretary. See, just concluding Champions Cup trophy, the captain of the team said the 11 member won the cup. So it is a team that wins the cup. So more so with CGP, all of you, the members, the office bearers of CGP have put in an excellent effort in the past 1.5 years, and I'm happy to be your predecessor in some way. And I know the difficulties in organizing such programs. I appreciate your performance, and I'm very sure this will continue in the coming months also. Wishing you all the best, and thanking the faculty for the time they are going to spend with our members. Over to you, Sendil and Anand. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your words of appreciation. It means a lot to us, so that we can improve on it. Now I request our immediate past state president, Dr. Abul Hasan sir, to give us the words of felicitation. Sir Abul sir.
Thank you, Anand. Sendil, respected President, Secretary, and Dr. Sridhar, and all the delegates, faculties of this course. I am very happy to be associated with the inauguration of this particular course. And we are all champion of this CGP Diabetic. Our diabetic course are very popular, not only in the state and also across the country. And actually, we were searching for kind of scaling up our CME activities. That's how these courses have emerged. And I'm very happy to see that our courses have come to this level that really empower our doctors, not only MBBS doctors, and all the doctors across
to empower themselves in diabetology. And knowing diabetology is very, very important in today's scenario. Everybody is coming to us for the surgery, for other kind of treatments, having a problem with the diabetes. So I think it's very important to know the diabetes for all the physicians and surgeons. So I think this particular effort by CGP is fulfilling this objective. So I wish all the delegates who are, and also the members who joined this course all the very best. And I know this your aspiration would be very much fulfilled by IMA CGP faculties. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Over to you, Dr. Anand.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the very kind words of appreciation, sir. Now I would request our State Finance Secretary, Dr. Gauri Shankar, sir. Dr. Gauri Shankar, sir. Hello, am I audible?
You are audible, sir. You are audible.
Yeah. Gauri Shankar, sir, are you online?
I think he's not inside, sir.
Okay. Okay. Then whenever he joins, we'll proceed with it, sir. Okay. Yes. Now I request Dr. Bhavadharani, madam, to take over the proceedings and start the CME, madam. Bhavadharani, madam.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. Respected,
yes, sir. Thank you. We are waiting for your CME,
the past president and the president-elect secretary, sir, Karthik, sir, and the CGP director of Sendil, sir, Anand, sir, Treasurer, sir. I first appreciate the extreme interest taken by Dr. Sendil and Dr. Anand in promoting knowledge in every aspect to all the not only CGPs, of course, if you see in diabetology, all specialties, they join and take part in that. And we feel very happy and honored to be a part of this. And we extend our thanks to bring us into the part of in this program. Now, I am coming to the topic as such. We know in diabetes, we have various types, that is type 1 diabetes occurring in the children and the type 2 occurring in the adults and the GDM, gestational diabetes occurring during pregnancy, which can be full in a whole term called as hyperglycemia in pregnancy, which includes type 1 diabetes passing through pregnancy, type 2 passing through pregnancy, and also diabetes detected for the first time during pregnancy in insulin-resistant females because of the diabetogenic stress caused by the placental hormones. All these come under the term hyperglycemia in pregnancy. Otherwise, we can call it as gestational diabetes mellitus. And you see all these congenital anomalies you would have come across, and hypoglycemia, recurrent hypos in the newborn, IUGR, big babies, hydramnias during pregnancy, hypertension in future life, obesity in children or adults, cardiac problems, including myocardial infarction. For all this, if you take, it all starts in utero. That is, GDM or hyperglycemia in pregnancy is the mother of all these non-communicable diseases. So why to treat this gestational diabetes? It's because we are going to prevent two individuals, that is the mother herself and the offspring from the development of not only diabetes, but also all the other non-communicable diseases, obesity, dyslipidemia, and so forth. And this gestational diabetes can be very easily diagnosed with our national guidelines, the single test procedure with 75 grams of glucose in the fasting or non-fasting stage. As the patient comes to your clinic, do not bother about fasting or non-fasting. Give 75 grams of glucose and see the blood sugar after 2 hours. If it is 140 to 190, it is 199, it is gestational diabetes. If it is 200 or more, it is frank diabetes detected during pregnancy. Between 140 to 199, it is gestational diabetes. And for further monitoring also, it's very easy to keep all 2-hour postprandial less than 120. That is fasting less than 90 and 2-hour postprandial. For diagnosis, we are using glucose, but for further monitoring, you see only the fasting and postprandial. And whenever you have to start screening for the gestational diabetes in the very first trimester. And I'm going to talk about in the end, the primordial prevention. Now, time being, when to test, it is in the first trimester. Whom to test, it is a universal screening because we Indians are 11 times more prone to get diabetes. So every other pregnant woman has to be screened. And how to screen is by the single test procedure. And why to screen is because we are protecting 2 lives, that is a mother and the baby, from future diabetes and other non-communicable diseases. You please note that genetic, of course, plays a role in spreading the disease, but more than that, the epigenetics, the environment plays a great role in the development of this diabetes, because the undernutrition as well as the overnutrition in the mother, both is going to predispose the child to future diabetes. See, all these women are undernourished. Here you have to focus on the adequate nutrition. They should not have inadequate weight gain or undernourished. This will lead to IUGR and small for gestational age babies. They should be taught properly to eat. On the other hand, if you take, they celebrate pregnancy with more of sweets and everyday feast. This should also not happen. Here, what happens? Here it is a time for the conversation about obesity and pregnancy. That is, they have to cut down their calories, and there should not be any screens like either cell phone or TV or computer. And they should not go for this fast food. All tinned items should be avoided. And excessive food intake in the mother is associated with an increased proportion of large for gestation. Large for gestation, I mean, in the future they are going to be obese forever. And this increases the cardiovascular risk also in future. See, all these women, they do all the work. In spite of that, they delivered healthy children. Whereas now you take, everything has become mechanized under remote control. So, and we get ready-made food at our doorstep with the help of Swiggy, Zomato. All these has to be avoided. And remember, the child gets inculcated with the taste, what mother eats during pregnancy. As you sow, so you reap. And what is the principle of the main thing? This GDM is a lifestyle disorder. It's the disorder of the mother, making the innocent child for future diseases. So you please stick on to medical nutrition first. That is, more than 90% of the glucose intolerance in pregnancy is due to altered lifestyle, and 90% of the disorder can be managed by lifestyle modification. And whenever you see true GDM, that is the level, what I said, with glucose 140 to 199, you first put them on meal plan, that is medical nutrition therapy. If it is more than 200, straight away, along with medical nutrition therapy, you have to start with insulin. Insulin is the drug of choice during pregnancy, because oral hypoglycemic agents, they can cross the placenta and stimulate the fetal pancreas. So this is not allowed except for metformin, which I will say at the end of this program. That is, what we need is carbohydrate control meal plan with vitamins, minerals, and fiber content that will promote adequate nutrition with appropriate weight gain, normoglycemia without any ketosis. And you should not try for reduction in obesity during pregnancy, and the growing fetus should not be deprived of essential nutrition. If the patient is ideal weight, it's okay, and she can put on only 7 to 12 kgs during pregnancy. If it exceeds 12, you have to be very cautious. And what is the extra requirement is, first trimester, they don't need any increase. And the second trimester, you just add 340 calories to the existing calorie. And third, of course, they need a little more, that is 452 calories. This is in a simple manner. And the main thing what you should do, instead of taking 3 large meals, that is our routine, you have to split the same into 6 along with the added calories. That is, you have to start early by 8 o'clock in the morning, and in between the lunch and morning breakfast, you should have some snacks. So also between the lunch and night, you have some snacks in the evening with bedtime snacks. Especially in the night, you have to put more protein because she is going to starve for a long period in the night. And all nutrients has to be in the proper proportion. If you take, carbohydrates is only 45%, protein 25 to 30, and fat is 20 to 30%. It's very easy to follow in a plate model where half the plate is full of greens and vegetables and only quarter plate of rice, ragi, wheat, whatever cereals we take, and equal to that, they need to take proteins. That's very important. What we do, we are taking 75% of carbohydrates, not as I said. This should be avoided and they should go in this manner along with milk and protein. And again, during pregnancy, fasting and feasting, both has to be avoided. And remember, in the morning, the insulin resistance is the maximum. So reduce the carbohydrate load and increase the protein and make it a lengthy carb so that the diabetogenic stress is brought down. Go for complex carbohydrates with low GI to improve the insulin sensitivity and normalize the blood sugar in all 3 meals. And we need a 130 gram of carbohydrate per a day. That is non-pregnant. Whereas during pregnancy, we need more. Of course, 175. But what they take is more than 250. So, of course, our Indians, they have to reduce the carbohydrate. And dietary intake, it should be individualized. If they are used to rice, go with rice. If they are used to chapati, they can go for chapati. Whatever cereals they like, according to that, you prescribe the proteins and vegetables, greens, all that. And they should have a flexible and modifiable diet. You split the calories throughout the day. It should not be in a single time so that the blood sugar rises not much. It slopes, it raises in a very flat manner. Again, when you say avoid sugar, they'll just avoid white sugar alone. Remember, all these has to be avoided, and all the fried items should be avoided. And whatever they take, they should keep it in a plate together. That is, 3 idlis or 2 idlis has to be put together along with sambar chutney. Everything they take, then they have to, not one by one they consume. That's very important. And see to the rice, what type of rice they are taking, whether it is just steamed brown rice, a white rice, polished, or they go for biryani. It's just a whole grain bread or white bread or cakes, cookies, croissants. They say, I'm just taking rice, I'm just taking wheat, like that. You see to the type of food what they are taking. For example, if they say fish, it should be steamed grilled fish, not deep fry or stir fried fish. All these salads with sauce, all these has to be avoided. Again, fruits, they can be taken as just chewed and taken, not as fruit juices. And that is a powerful modulator of the gut microbiota. The gut microbiota plays an important role in all the diseases, especially insulin resistance and the inflammatory response. The gut microbiota modulation aids in management of undernutrition and overnutrition. Both can be corrected. And along with diet, it's very important they should do some physical activity, not the routine regular activity after every meal. That is after breakfast, afternoon, lunch, and also in the night. 5 to 10 minutes of walking along with whatever routine exercise they do is very important along with food. They can take any type of exercise they like. Walking is very simple. And coming to the normal blood sugar level in pregnancy, and we need to follow the patient with fasting 90 and all postprandial, all 3 meals. It's not only in the morning. It should be round the clock 24/7 control throughout pregnancy. So you need to rotate the blood sugar checking once in the morning, once in the afternoon, once in the night for pre-meal and post-meal. See here, Hernandez, after doing 40 years of research in 12 centers around the world, he has found out what is normal during pregnancy. He has seen that fasting is always less than 80 and 1 hour doesn't cross 122 and 2 hours less than 110. Remember, this 110 is the fetal renal threshold. For us, it is 180, whereas for the fetus, it is only 110. And coming to the time in range, that is how long the patient is within control. It's different for type 1 diabetes and it is different for type 2 diabetes. and also the type 1 and type 2 passing through diabetes. All these are little liberal. Whereas if we have diabetes detected during pregnancy or GDM or type 2 passing through pregnancy here, they have to be under control for more than 90% of the time. Again, if you see the low blood sugar level, it is 70 and it can go up to 63. Whereas in pregnancy, the hypo is only 63, not 70 like non-pregnant, 63, and they can even go below 54, 1% of the time. Remember, hypoglycemia is not a problem, but the maximum dose of insulin or the drug, whatever you are using during pregnancy, has to be given, that the fetus should not feel that it is inside a diabetic milieu. Your treatment should be like that. Now, remember, when you are screening for diabetes, it has to be done before 10th week. Why I say this? Because 11th week, the fetal pancreas starts secreting insulin. When you screen the patient beyond 10 weeks, what happens? The fetal pancreas controls the mother's blood sugar. See, here you say, actually the mother's blood sugar is high, but it looks low at the cost of increased insulin secretion by the fetus, and this will bear all the consequences. This hyperinsulinemia is the cause. Initially is from the maternal side, but after 11 weeks, the fetal pancreas starts secreting and it takes over, and this should not happen. So what we are doing now is primordial prevention of diabetes. That is what we do. At 8 weeks, we do a 1 postprandial blood sugar. At 8 weeks, we do 1 postprandial blood sugar. It is not with glucose. If it is 110 to 119, we put them on metformin 500 half BD. What happens? This reduces the blood sugar and brings down less than 110 before 10 weeks. So at 11th week, the fetus is not exposed to blood sugar more than 110. So what happens? It is not allowed to secrete. Once this fetal pancreas is stimulated to secrete insulin, it becomes an irreversible process. It secretes insulin lifelong. That is, as long as it is inside the mother, it steals glucose from the mother, and once it is born, it goes for recurrent hypoglycemia. Recurrent hypoglycemias, at what time the physicians used to ask us, the mother didn't have any diabetes, but why the child is going for hypoglycemia? It is because of the fetal handling of maternal blood sugar. The mother's blood sugar looks normal, but fetus gets all the problems due to hyperinsulinemia, which starts at 11th week. So you have to bring down the blood sugar before 10th week. To bring it less than 110, you have to start action at 8th week. 8th week, you do 1 2-hour postprandial. It is not with glucose. If it is 110 to 119, put them on 500 milligram metformin half BD, and we have followed these cases. They are not developing GDM at all. We do the test for screening at first trimester 12 weeks, then 24 weeks, then at 32 weeks. We have seen those who have been put on this metformin half BD, when the blood sugar is between 110 to 119, they are not at all developing. Every problem is put down. That is, no perinatal problems, no hyperinsulinemia in the fetus, no obesity in the child. We are following those children also, and we expect that in future they will not develop any non-communicable diseases also. This is what we are doing at present, that is primordial prevention of diabetes. Once you see the blood sugar, if it is more than 120 postprandial, 120 postprandial has to be taken as positive GDM, and it has to be put on meal plan and followed. If necessary, it has to be put on insulin or metformin according to the severity of the blood sugar. And again, the monitoring, what you can do depending on the blood sugar, you have to see 2 times, 6 times, 10 times blood sugar according to the precious bad obstetric history and all those, depending on the blood sugar level. This is very important. Normal GDM, that is those who have just 140 at with glucose, or if you see 110 to 119 at 8 week can be put on meal plan along with metformin. This will prevent the development of GDM in the mother. Thank you. Now, any doubts, we can have it at the end. Now, I request our Dr. Madhu Perisamy available. Sir, Madhu, sir. If not, we'll move on to Dr. Srihari from Vijayawada. Sir is a pediatrician who has got a special interest in diet. You are going to hear very many new things in diet, which I got to know when I had a conference at Guntur, and I want to share these new points to every one of you. Over to you, sir.
Welcome, madam. Good afternoon to everyone. Hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
So, as madam has already introduced me, I'm a pediatrician. So you must be wondering what I'm doing here in a diet-related conference or a diabetology-related conference. So all I can say is that I have some personal experience on myself. I've been trying out different diets for the last 7 years. I just like to share my experiences in this small CME. Thank you. Not able to change my slides. Yeah. So I'm from Bangalore, and I'd like to welcome everybody. This is our wonderful resorts that we have called Jungle Resorts, run by the Karnataka government. So whenever you require any relaxation, the Western Ghats has a lot of these. You can come and have your fun over here. So this is a basic slide which I just like to do a body analysis to all my patients who come to me. And this basically will tell us the amount of fat that we have in the viscera. So it is a visceral fat that is responsible for most of our metabolic syndrome. So I basically try to screen them and educate my patients with the help of these. So apart from this, your muscle mass and the body mass index are two important things which will determine our health. I'd like to classify this whole thing into 10 truths and 10 tips that we can carry across to make sure that we are all healthy. I like talking to doctors because if I can even change one doctor, they will be able to change 10,000 of other patients who are following them. The first truth is how many of us are really healthy. So if you go back and see, most of us would be overweight. We might be having a higher body mass index. The typical Indian should have a body mass index of 22 or below, unlike someone in the abroad who has 25 as normal. And we should keep our visceral fat less than 9. One of the easiest ways of measuring the visceral fat is through a body analysis machine. Apart from this, a DEXA scan or an MRI also will help us in detecting the visceral fat. The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. Socrates has told this way long back. I think we need to accept that we need to learn new things every day. The truth number 2, it is not just about being fat. So this is a typical story which has happened truly in the United Kingdom, where these two doctors, one Yajnik, who is an Indian diabetology doctor from Pune, and Yadkin, who is a diabetologist from UK, they both met once, and our Indian counterpart just told them that I look thin, but I'm actually fat. But everybody laughed at him, telling that how can you be fat? You look so thin. After the DEXA scan has been invented, both of them got their DEXA scan done to visualize their internal fat. In spite of both being 22.3 BMI, the visceral fat in Indian was 21%, or the total fat was 21% compared to only 9% in the Western population. It's basically that we Indians tend to accumulate more fat than muscle, which leads to metabolic syndrome. The truth number 3, it is anabolism versus catabolism. So basically, as humans, we are not supposed to be having abundance of food or availability of food all through our year. So there should be fluctuations in the day and in the year at what amount of food that we get. So our body has to go from anabolism to a catabolism state. But unfortunately, because of excessive calorie consumption, we are constantly in the anabolic phase. So there are certain hormones which are active in the anabolic state, which make sure that the excess food is completely being shifted into the fat cells and making us obese. And this is leading to the metabolic syndrome. A wonderful index called the glucose to ketone ratio is one of the best things to monitor if you are in the borderline of anabolic catabolic state or you're always in an anabolic state. The next reality that I really learned about is if you can keep your cell healthy, you are going to stay healthy. I would like to stress a little more onto this particular point. Keeping your cell healthy is nothing but hydrating the cell well, making sure the glucose load to the cell is appropriate, and we should ensure that oxygenation of the cell is happening. So we'll go into deep of all these three things. Coming to hydration of the cell, if we just look into what are the extracellular elements and the intracellular elements. Majority of our extracellular elements are sodium, chloride, and bicarbonate. And even the food that we eat are basically sodium chloride in the form of table salt and bicarbonate and some sodium in the form of our bicarbonate or baking sodas that we're using in our food, which is abundant of all the major extracellular elements. At the same time, we are depriving ourselves of potassium, phosphorus, and magnesium, which are mainly intracellular elements. It is because of this imbalance, the water, even though it is sufficiently present inside our blood, is not moving into our cell and resulting in a cellular dehydration. And that's one of the reasons that we are losing our health. The next thing is about glucose. So I just want to stress about this Kraft's pattern. This was a study which was done in the 1970s. That's more than 50 years back, when they first knew how to measure the amount of insulin in the body. So this person called Kraft, he has measured the insulin levels at fasting, and he has done a glucose challenge test and tried to do the insulin levels after taking 75 grams of glucose. And he found that there are different patterns which were happening. And most of the people, that's around 65% of the Americans in 1974, had pre-diabetes, that is hyperinsulin secretion. So it is basically abusing our insulin gland to secrete more insulin to control our diabetic status is what is happening. And easily each of us are in this pre-diabetic state for 15 to 30 years, where we have abundant time to rectify our problems, but we are still ignoring. A simple insulin test in the fasting and calculating our HOMA-IR is a simple test which can tell us if we are in hyperinsulinic state or in a pre-diabetic state. The third thing is about oxygenation of the cell. It's because of the tremendous stress or other issues like inflammation, there is not sufficient blood supply which is occurring towards the cell, resulting in less oxygenation of the cell. If you go back to our Krebs cycle, in an aerobic state, 1 unit of our calories can produce 32 ATPs, whereas in an anaerobic state, it produces just 2 ATPs. So keeping ourselves abundant with oxygen by reducing the inflammation is one of the ways to keep our cells healthy. Then, is it just by keeping ourselves healthy, are we going to be healthy is the next question. So this rose to a question in me that who am I? So when I've just gone through different diets, I just first started off with a ketogenic diet where I completely removed my carbohydrates or kept it very low, and I could reverse my diabetes. But later I came across there are several other diets which are helping in removing or reducing your diabetes or controlling the diabetes, like your paleo diet, where they allow fruits along with your protein and fats, or your sattvic diet, where exclusively they put you onto carbohydrates and remove the fats, or you have whole food protein-based diets. These are all again carbohydrate-rich diets where they just put you onto a plant-based diet. These are carbohydrate-rich diets where they concentrate on more carbohydrate. Again, a raw food diet or a carnivore diet where they completely remove your carbohydrate. All these things are helping in reducing your blood sugars and insulin levels. So what is this exactly working in the body? Is it food, macronutrients, or is there anything else? That is when I tried to find an answer for this. If you go back and see our own human body, we are made up of 10 trillion cells, whereas there are 100 trillion microorganisms which are harboring on us, of which 80% are inside our gut alone. So altering of our gut microbiome is one of the major reasons for illness. And if we can regulate the microbiome of our gut, we can stay healthy. Truth number 6, illness versus wellness. A simple removal of I, the ego, and replacing it we as the organisms and microbiota within our body can make an illness into a wellness. So what is responsible for this microbiota? What changes can we do in our lifestyle which can help the growth of this bacteria? So one, undoubtedly, it is fiber. So fiber is something which feeds the microorganisms within our colon. The more fiber you have, the better you get or healthy microbiota. At the same time, the processed food is completely altering our microbiota. For example, a processed sugar. The minute you put the processed sugar into your mouth, the biota of your mouth is altered. The pH of your mouth is altered. And that helps the growth of organisms. So if you see, like most of the people who eat sugary foods or they keep chewing some sugary things have caries too. That's all because we are altering our microbiota in the oral cavity itself by taking processed food. The same thing is happening in our stomach. If the sugar releases inside the stomach, we get H. pylori infections. If it goes in the duodenum, you get some duodenal related biome alterations like giardiasis infections. And in the small intestines, we are having overgrowth, which is all resulting in illness. And ultimately, what I understood was, if an organism has to live, it is the pH which is the most important. So pH of all parts of a body are responsible for the growth of organisms. So in this regard, I just found a study which was done by a reef scientist in Australia, where he started examining all the common foods and seeing which of these is altering the microbiota of a tissue paper or a culture test inside the laboratory. Out of 180 different food ingredients, he found only 18 of them were altering the food. And in this, he classified them as bacteriophagal, which are killing the bacteria, and a bactericidal, which are killing the bacteria, and a bacteriophagal, which are increasing the viral count and thereby killing the bacteria. So these are two mechanisms which are occurring with our foods. And the common foods which he noticed was sugar, stevia, and we have chili powders or some pungent turmeric or tamarind. All these things are known to alter our gut microbiome. And he reported that the pH of these foods is responsible for it. So after I went back and researched a little more into it, I found that a book written in India 3000 years back, the father of medicine, is called Charaka. He mentioned that our foods should all have 6 tastes: the bitter, salt, sour, astringent taste in each and every meal of us. So if we can balance these 6 tastes, we can balance the microbiota. And when we have illness, we need to alter these tastes to get back to a lively microbiota. So this is something which is there already in our ancient system. The next truth is, we as doctors do not know what is junk food. That is one of the major problems that I come across. When I talk to patients, when I talk to parents, everybody is confused about what is junk food. So always it was puzzling to me, how can a burger or a pizza be junk when a meal or a masala dosa is healthy? So in this regard, I never could answer these questions until I came across a beautiful article which was done as a multi-continental article where our own Indian doctor, Dr. Rebecca Kurian, who's from St. John's, was part of the study. They have taken samples of all the restaurant foods from each of the continents and just did a bold study where they just grinded the whole food and studied the micronutrients and macronutrients of foods and then classified if they were junk or not. It was found that the junk food, the restaurant foods which are there available in countries like India and Italy or even in underdeveloped nations were having more junk food compared to the Western fast food chains. So basically we need to understand that it is the processing of food which is more responsible. A white rice is as junk as a pizza or a burger, and we cannot label it to be a healthy food. So as minimal processing as possible is the mantra. Then I came across this person called Elton. He is a breatharian. So most of you wouldn't have heard about a breatharian. Breatharians are people who take less than 500 calories a day. There are more than 1 million of them in the world, and they all meet at Israel every year for a conference. And people can stay healthy with less calories. It is nothing to do with calorie in or calorie out. Same time, I was just reading a book where they have shown the prisoners who were the Jews who were put into confinement by the Hitler government. They were all given 700 calorie diet. So if you see in the right side, they're all emaciated. Somebody who's taking 700 calories of food is getting emaciated, but a person who's taking just 500 calories or less can be so muscular. So it is all about what we think and what we pursue that makes us healthy more than just the calorie in or calorie out. Then the ultimate truth that I understood was that we need to eat what we like, and that can make us happy and stay healthy for a very long time. So it's just jokes that I just want to post over here. We have this BKC Iyengar, who is founder of the yoga, modern yoga, who lived for 96 years, whereas Kulshwant Singh, who used to drink whiskey every day all through his life, would live for 99 years. So it's just how you keep yourself happy that you can stay healthy and live longer. At the same time, you have Warren Buffett, who publicly says that he eats a McDonald's and Coke every day. So he can still stay healthy because he's keeping himself happy. So I'm not trying to promote both of these things, but this is something. So what next? So let us come into the solutions of what we can do with the truths that we've learned so far. So I'd like to classify them into 3 things. One is the things you must change. You like it or you don't like it, you have to change. By just changing these 3 things, you can improve the health of your family and not just yourself. So one is the salt. So the regular table salt that we're getting here is having just 3 minerals: sodium, chloride, and iodine, because it is fortified with iodine. Whereas the regular sea salt, the hand processed sea salt that you get in the seashore, has 98 minerals. So in the name of a healthy salt or a pure salt, we are trying to remove the 95 minerals which are essential for us. They are nothing but the magnesium and the potassium or your phosphorus, selenium, and other minerals which are essential for our cellular health. So going back to the regular salt, which is available, hand processed salt, is important. Selecting a good salt, it should be slightly gray in color and sticky. So when it is sticky, it says that it has a lot of magnesium. Magnesium is hydrophobic, hydroscopic. It tries to attract a lot of water. And when magnesium is present in the salt, salt gets sticky. So next time you want to change your salt, I would suggest you to go back to your Toothigudi salt. That's one of the best places where you can get hand processed salt, and try to have the regular unprocessed salt. The second is the sugar. So sugar is there in every carbohydrate. It is not just that the white sugar or the brown sugar or a jaggery is a culprit. Even the rice is producing the same amount of carbohydrate. But the processed sugar, we are again removing all the minerals possible within it. So going back and replacing the processed sugar with jaggery, palm jaggery, or honey, we can at least get back some minerals and nutrients along with the carbohydrate, which is anyway there in any of these. So just replacing your sugar with any of these things will help you get back your iron and minerals and your other electrolytes. The third and the most important thing is the refined oils. So basically, there are studies which are showing in California where they have taken a retrospective study and collected all the data of people who had heart blocks in the 1980s. And incidentally, they found that none of them were dying of heart attack. And if you see the latest evidence in California, there are more than 30% of the people who are getting admitted to a hospital are having heart attacks. So one of the major things which happened in 1900 was the usage of refined oils. Basically, these seed oils were used as the oils from these seeds were taken from the cotton seeds especially and made soaps out of it. So after this soap industry started using these oils, they did not know what to do with the excess oil that they were getting from these seeds, and they wanted to use it on humans and see if something could happen. So when they started using these seed oils onto humans, they incidentally found that the cholesterol from the seed oils was not getting absorbed and it was reducing the cholesterol levels in the body. And incidentally, the same time, they were conscious about cholesterol causing heart attacks. So they started to blame the cholesterol and try to replace these healthy oils like ghee with seed oils. So what we need to understand here is that there's something called as phytosterols. Phytosterols do not get absorbed by our body, and if there is a shortage, they get absorbed, and they cannot replace the sterols of an animal source, and they form defective RBCs, and these defective RBCs cause rupture and clogging and resulting in blood clots. So one of the major things that we can do is to just stop taking these vegetable source oils, and if you're taking, let it be a fruit-based oils or a nut-based oils rather than a seed-based oils. So examples for this is ghee, coconut oil, olive oil, avocado oil. Now maybe if you want to take, you can take some amount of groundnut oil, which is not refined and a cold pressed. Again, you're trying to remove all the essential things which are there within the nut by refining it. There are three things that I would like to say as ensure. We need to ensure we get these three things to stay healthy. One is protein. More than 70% of Indians do not get the sufficient protein they need for the day. We need to calculate our protein and make sure that we are getting sufficient protein. If you can ensure your protein is sufficient, automatically your satiety will come down. You won't be able to eat too much of junk or too much of unprocessed carbohydrate. All of us need at least 1 gram per kg of protein. That would be the ideal protein that we should be taking. The second is how we organize our food plate. So our food plate should have 4 quarters. 1 quarter should be vegetables. Second quarter should be fruits. And if you're diabetic, you can make 2 quarters into vegetables. The third quarter should be protein. A highly rich protein food should be the third quarter. And the fourth quarter should be your carbohydrate. So I do not want to stress on trying to say don't eat processed carb at all. So if you give me a choice to eat a brown rice or a black rice to white rice, I still like to enjoy my white rice. So it's very difficult for us to go back and eat something which is unprocessed carbohydrate. So the best thing that we can do is to ferment our carbohydrates. If you can go for fermented carbohydrates, it is going to reduce the amount of glucose load to the body. Some things like your curd, which is overnight stored in a pot, or you can just try to go for a sourdough bread if you're going for breads, or keeping your idli dosa batter outside so that it gets a little sour and the next day you can use it. So fermenting your carb is one thing which will help. And the order at which you should eat should be the vegetables, then fruits, after that the protein, and last should be the carbohydrate. And in addition, a small quantities of dairy in the form of ghee or buttermilk or curd is something which we can have. So these are small changes which we can do to the food plate to ensure that we get whatever we like and we can stay healthy. The third thing we need to ensure is water. So water is essential, and it is more than 60% of our body. So we need to ensure that we get sufficient water. Anything between 2 to 4 liters of water is essential. And if you are in a hyperglycemic state or hyperinsulinemic state, you will require more water to push it into the cell. And another thing which is drastically going wrong with all of us is by filtering our water. So all our ancestors were able to drink the water directly from the river or from the lakes. But unfortunately, today, if we don't have a mineral water and we drink the tap water, we are all going to die. That's a belief that we all have. So trying to excessively filter this water is not good. The TDS of water is very important. WHO recommends anywhere between 150 to 500 is the permissible TDS of water. But the processed RO waters have anything around 5 to 35. So we are removing all the essential minerals by filtering the water too much. So stopping the RO filters, if the TDS is within 500, we can directly consume the water. All we need is a carbon filter to remove the excess chlorine that is added by the government. If that is not added, we don't even need a carbon filter. A simple cloth is good enough to filter all the bacteria and viruses. The third thing that I realized was to be mindful. So there are 3 aspects of being mindful. One is mindful eating. So make sure that you eat only 80% full of your stomach. So we need to keep some space in the stomach for it to grind and digest the food. If you just keep the full stomach with food, it doesn't have space to digest and it results in indigestion. It's like our mixie at home. You just try to put the whole mixie full of rice and try to switch it on. It's not going to get on. So we need some air for the digestion to occur. So how do you know that you are 80% full? If you can slowly keep eating and observing your stomach, you start getting a burp. The first burp says that you're 80% full, and that's the time we should stop eating. The second thing which all Ayurvedic physicians try to promote, it is to eat liquids and drink solids. So what do you mean by eating liquid? So whenever you're taking anything in a liquid form, let it be in the mouth for some time. Let it trigger the secretions of the saliva, which will help in the digestion of the liquid. And then slowly gulp. The same way, if you're eating a solid, we need to keep chewing until it becomes liquid and then try to swallow it. Our nearest cousins, who are the chimpanzees, spend 5 hours a day chewing, whereas we don't even do for 15 minutes. So I think we need to improve the amount of time we chew our food, and mindful eating by chewing well and ensuring that we don't overstretch our stomachs and eat will make a huge difference. Then mindful exercise. So this, I'd like to share my own example here. When I first was diagnosed with diabetes, they asked me to exercise more and eat less so that I can balance my sugars. After I started to go for swimming, I was swimming for 1.5 hours a day and then coming back and having my breakfast. I all of a sudden found that my HbA1c levels has become worse. They went up by 1.5. So I was really surprised why exercise and healthy food was making me sick. After that, I realized that when we try to excessively strain our body, we go into an anaerobic phase, and that leads to more of problems than good to us. So just trying to keep our heart rate within 130 when we are exercising is the best way to know if you are in aerobic or anaerobic exercises. And being in aerobic exercises is the best thing. So yoga is one of the best ways where you don't over-exercise yourself by just doing yoga. If you're doing any other exercise, try to monitor your heart rate and keep it below 130. Apart from this, a barefoot walking and nature walks are 2 things which makes a huge difference. It is basically the amount of electrolytes or the energy cells which are communicating or earthing with your soil is something which is important. It is basically that earthing is something which is not happening with us, which is also resulting in illness. A barefoot walking and walking onto the grass or sand and in the nature can relax you and make you much more healthy. The third mindful thing I would like to stress upon is mindful meditation. If you like to enjoy every food that you want to eat, if you can keep your mind calm, you can certainly be healthy. So in this regard, I would like to train you all with the small things that you can do. What is meditation? I never understood this. And recently, after I started doing a lot of research, I got a concept of what is meditation. Meditation is nothing but reducing the number of thoughts we get. A normal human being gets 65,000 thoughts in a day, out of which 80 to 85% are negative thoughts. He only thinks of what can happen wrong with him rather than what can happen good with him. So if we can reduce the number of thoughts, we automatically can reduce the number of negative thoughts. And if you remove the negative thoughts and keep positive thoughts within our mind, we can stay in a meditative state. The three ways which we can do, one is to constantly chant a mantra. So you can chant any mantra. It is not necessary it should be religious. You can just say, I love myself, and keep on chanting like that. So when you keep on chanting, you always go back and try to recollect or go into a subconscious mind where you try to know what should be the next word which is coming. That will calm you down. If you can chant something for 21 minutes in the morning and 21 minutes in the evening, you can reduce the number of thoughts that you can get. And the second way of trying to be in a meditative state is self-questioning. You can all just try to experience this yourself. Try to ask yourself, what should I think next? So when you just look into this, you will be surprised that you will not get an answer. So if you keep on asking your mind, what should I think next? Your mind is not going to give you any answer. It will be completely blind. So self-questioning is something, whenever you're sitting free, whenever you're lonely, you can try to self-question yourself. Why is this food tasting like this? Who is appreciating the food within me? Who am I? Questions like this, which are going to calm you completely and going to make you thoughtful. And the third and the most important thing is breathing. It is Gautama Buddha who first told the whole world that breathing and mind are connected to each other. So what he has told us, if you can just pause your breathing, the thought process is also getting paused. So just trying to pinch your nose, catch hold of it and try to hold for some time, you will be surprised to see that you do not get any thoughts. So if you can have more pause within your breathing, you can reduce the number of thoughts. So trying to inhale for 4 seconds, hold the breath for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and again hold the breath for 4 seconds. So whenever you're conscious about your breathing, you can just practice this 4-4-4-4 technique, where you're pausing for 8 seconds for every 16 seconds. So at least for half of your time, you can have a thought-free mind. So if you can practice this on a regular basis, unconsciously, you will be having the same pattern of breathing and reduce your thoughts. If you all have been following me, I only told 9 truths and 9 tips. I have left behind 1 truth and 1 tip. That is, the penultimate truth is gratitude. If you do not have gratitude, you cannot get anything you want. So whatever you want, you have to first express gratitude for what you have. And if you want more of something, you need to keep giving the same thing to people. That is when you get more of it. So if you want more knowledge, you try to share more knowledge. That is mantra. So these are the various people who I have gone through. I've got information from all these people. I would like to be grateful for all of them. And majority of them are not doctors or they're non-clinicians who have contributed to my knowledge. And the penultimate the change that you need in yourself is take care of yourself. Be selfish. Keep the first hour of your day for your own health, which can make you healthy and which can make you happy. If you can just allot 1 hour for yourself, you can live longer and serve your people longer. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor, for the wonderful practical things, what we need to follow in life rather than going for medicines and other things. It's very important first to follow the normal, proper things in life before we start any other medications. Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much. Now we'll move on to the next session, very important session. Whenever we say diabetes, our teacher taught, when you examine a patient with diabetes, start examining from foot to head. That is what he has said, because foot is the very bad complication what we come across, and is the costliest complication. It doesn't mean that it is just a foot problem. It denotes that all your systems have got affected. And whenever you see a foot problem, don't think it's just a small wound. See everything behind it and see for the cause and then treat it. For that, which we have now Dr. Madhu Periyasamy from Ganga Hospital, Coimbatore, who are known for their curative treatment for foot problems, not they treat the cause, not the ulcer. So let's hear from Dr. Madhu Periyasamy, who is renowned and who is known throughout India for his food services. To you, sir. So you can share your screen. So you have to unmute.
I'm just sharing my screen, madam.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Welcome, sir.
Well.
Visible, sir?
So I hope I'm audible, madam.
Audible, sir. Visible.
Yeah. Thank you. So today I first of all, I thank the organizers, IMA in particular, and our recently elected secretary of the RSSDA Tamil Nadu chapter, Dr. Bhavatarini. Thank you, madam. Thank you for inviting me over to have you amidst a galaxy of physicians. I think I might be one of the few surgeons today. So my role here is to particularly tell you about the options that surgery has to offer in this specialty of diabetes, particularly in treating the diabetic foot problems. So this is the ideal patient care cycle, where if you see usually the patient is managed by the physician. Maybe in course of time, he develops an uncomplicated primary ulcer or maybe a recurrent foot ulcer. Is referred to a surgeon for surgical management. The foot ulcer is healed. The patient is again referred back to the primary care physician, and then the patient is continued to be managed by the primary care physician. So here, the diabetologist is the primary care provider, and the surgeon plays an intermittent role to manage one of the complications of diabetes. Here, he helps the physician to achieve optimal homeostasis. So this is the ideal cycle that should happen for each and every patient in our state.
Yes.
And I would also like to highlight the prevalent myths in the diabetic foot treatment. That is, wounds heal poorly in diabetes, which if you take with certain conditions, yes, it is partly true and a little bit untrue. Risk of an additional wound. If you already have a non-healing ulcer, why go for a surgery, an unscheduled, that is planned surgery where they will be making another wound, so will that heal? Then patients with diabetes have a higher risk of anesthesia, again true. Comorbid patients may not do well post-operatively. This is also true. And the usual widely recognized saying that amputation is the only surgery that works in diabetic foot ulcers. This is the only myth that I would actually like to break today. If that is broken, then maybe I would have achieved what madam has set me out to achieve today. So where does surgery stand with regard to the International Working Group on the Diabetic Foot? So is surgery authorized at all? Do we have enough evidence that surgery is recommended? So here, if you see, this is the IWGDF guidelines 2019. So here there is an infection or ischemic ulcer, no infection or ischemic ulcer. All of these are conservative methods, either TCC, removable casts, ankle high offloading devices, or footwear. So, but if you see here, if the ulcer fails to heal with all of this, the advice is surgery. So surgery occupies maybe about 10 to 15% of the slide. The space given for surgery is around 10 to 15%. But then when we move on to 2023, again, you get all of these. But if you see, the space allotted to surgery is gradually increasing. So, and all of these recommendations are backed up by evidence-based medicine. So there are recommendations which are recognized and increasingly being recognized as methods to fall back upon if all conservative methods fail. So surgery is the method which is the final holy grail for diabetic foot ulcer. That is the thing that we have right now. So let me give you a few examples of traditional plastic surgery. I am a plastic surgeon. I work at Ganga Hospital, Coimbatore. So these are all of the slides today are our patients, which we have done, and we'll be exhibiting them today. So this is a patient with a heel ulcer. Here we have excised the heel ulcer, triangulated the defect, and moved a rotation flap. You can see this is the flap that has been raised, and you can see the flap has been transposed there and inset with no residual raw area, and you have got a well-healed wound. So both the surgeon, the patient, the primary care physician, all of them are very happy with this result. Again, you have another patient. You have a first metatarsal head ulcer, hallux valgus deformity, a small VY flap has been advanced, and well-healed wound. So the surgeon also is very happy. We were also very happy. The patient has gone back to their primary care physicians. But then what actually truly happens afterwards? That music is actually faced by the diabetologists. The patient treated pre-op, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, he comes back with the same ulcer. This time he may not come back to the same surgeon. And surgeons rarely get to see their own complications. So here, a small ulcer, flap done, 1 year later, 2 years, again the same ulcer is developing. So the problem here is not healing of the ulcer, but preventing the recurrence of the ulcer. So how exactly do we prevent the recurrence of the ulcer? So that we prevent this adverse patient care cycle, where there is a foot ulcer, surgical management, there is failure to heal or recurrence, and it gets into a complication with a frustrated patient, and the patient is both frustrated with the referring physician and also the operating surgeon. So all of us are getting a bad name because we do not understand exactly what needs to be done and why it needs to be done. And we cannot afford to have these complications because it has a very, very unpleasant impact, both on the surgeon and the primary physician and the referring physician. So particularly for the physician, the ulcer is being dressed with different ointments. He finds out there is no clear surgical solution. Then he thinks, why to refer at all and spoil our own name? So he continues to try various methods of conservative management by deferring surgery until the stage reaches where amputation is the only surgery that works in that patient. So delay is the reason why that this saying that the amputation was the only surgery that worked in diabetic foot became true. But then why this delay is because the surgeons did not offer the physicians any reliable treatment method. So the fault is with us own surgeons. I accept as a surgeon that we were at fault in not providing the physicians with reliable healing methods. But things are slowly changing. The government has also recognized the importance of surgery, about which we'll be talking about more in the coming slides. So usually what happens, the patient is referred for surgery. We do a procedure for healing, there is a recurrence. We do a more complex procedure, again there is a recurrence, and then we have a frustrated patient and surgeon. So how do you minimize recurrence? We can minimize recurrence by understanding why ulcers occur and why ulcers recur. So when we understand why ulcers occur, we can primarily prevent the ulcer. And for secondary prevention, we need to also understand why ulcers recur. So ulcers occur because of a combination of a loss of sensation and biomechanical defect. If any one of these is not present, the ulcers usually do not occur. And the more important of this is the loss of sensation. Why do I say the more important of this is the loss of sensation? Is we often see small children, 6 years, 7 years, 10 years, coming with hereditary sensory autonomic neuropathy. And they themselves have exactly the same lesions that occurs in the adult diabetic foot patient. So these biomechanical issues, that is the normal mechanical problems itself, if you lose sensation, even in children, can cause ulcers. So the loss of sensation here is the more important of these two factors. So formation of ulcer because of neuropathy, which is more prevalent in our population. About 85% of all diabetic foot ulcers in the Indian population we have found occur because of neuropathy in a well vascularized foot. So because of neuropathy, there is a loss or atrophy of all the intrinsic muscles. There is atrophy of the fat pad, which acts as a cushion. And also because of the intrinsic loss, there is deformities such as clawfoot, leading to areas of very high pressure, which result in the formation of calluses. These calluses now start to act like stones within the footwear. Actually, a stone in the footwear is better than a callus, because a stone at least will keep moving around here and there. But this callus will stay in the same place, and with every step will increase the pressure underneath that callus by 30%. That is how removal of callus can prevent ulcers. These calluses acts like a stone within the footwear, and then they cause a subcallus ulcer. This is heralded by a black coloration of the, you can see this black coloration here. If you see that black coloration, you can warn the patient that soon as I remove the callus, there is going to be an ulcer underneath, which has already occurred, and this is not because of me de-roofing that ulcer. Otherwise, the patient will go around the entire town saying that this doctor de-roofed the ulcer and then created this ulcer, which is not healing now. So whenever you see a black callus, the subcallus bleed, please warn the patient that there is already an ulcer which has formed. I am only going to try to heal that ulcer. Next is, why do ulcers recur? Because any treatment management cannot correct the persistence of sensory loss. Right now, we do not have any method of treatment which can reverse the sensory loss. And also the persistence of uncorrected biomechanical defects. But however, now surgery has recognized that there are methods to correct the biomechanical defects for specific ulcers. So this can be corrected by offloading. By offloading, we means sharing the pressure, not taking away the pressure, but sharing the pressure. So that ulcer also will have some pressure, but reduced pressure. It will be lesser than the subcritical pressure, so that the ulcer can heal. So this is the usual gamut of presentations that anyone can see in any of the diabetic clinics. And it's very difficult to make sense out of any of these ulcers, unless you arrange them and you find that there is a gradual progression of severity from left to right as you go across the slide. So this has been recognized and replicated in many of the diabetic foot classification systems. The most common and popular of which is the Meggett-Wagner classification system. This was a classification system which was initially developed for the dysvascular foot. The article in which this classification has been suggested itself has been, the heading is the dysvascular foot. The next most popular classification system is the University of Texas staging. It has 16 possible combinations. This staging is not suitable for everyday clinical practice. It is more better for research purposes. So hence, when we took all of this into account, we decided to use our own staging method, which again uses all the older, we stand on the shoulders of giants. We use the older, we use all the commonly used points and then mix and match of them to create 4 stages, which are easily clinically recognizable and which have treatment recommendations, so that the physicians in the rural areas, the smaller towns can recognize which of these patients requires surgical management and which they can manage in their own hometowns. So I'll show them with pictures. For example, here it is a foot at risk. Most of the classifications, such a foot is always foot at risk. There is a pre-ulcer, callus, there is no vascular problem, there is no Charcot. So this is a foot at risk. The same grade 2 problem, if neglected, can come with an open ulcer. Here again, but if you see, there is no erythema, no infection, no abscess, no other problem, no vascular issue, no Charcot. So this is called the ulcerated foot. Here there is only an ulcer. It is colonized, but not infected. So again, we need to understand the difference between colonization and invasive infection. So contamination is the presence of bacteria in the wound. Colonization is the presence of multiplying bacteria in the wound. Whereas invasive infection is the presence of multiplying bacteria in the wound along with the host response. So here in colonized feet, you do not have host response. You don't have erythema, you don't have fever, you don't have edema. So you don't have any purulent discharge. So in such type of wounds, please do not give antibiotics, because a lot of patients we see coming with prescriptions for very high antibiotics. Even this, immediately they start ferropenum. You'll only end up selecting the most resistant of the bacteria and allowing that to become the invasive organism. So all that this requires is a nice wash and a local antiseptic cream and dressings and the appropriate method of treatment or offloading as you determined. If this is again ignored, this ulcer can become invasively infected. There is a abscess which can result in soft tissue loss. So now it is a crippled foot. A cripple is one who cannot walk. So now with this foot, the patient cannot walk. The same grade 2 ulcer can present as a callus, can present as an ulcer, or it can present as an infected ulcer. So to this stage, we also add early Charcot or early ischemia. So if any of these are present, it is called the crippled foot, and crippled foot is usually a salvageable foot. You can salvage it without amputation. However, if you still delay, this same grade 2 ulcer can present with a massive sepsis, which can be life-threatening. In such a foot, immediate major amputation may be the only choice, and this is a critical foot. The patient is in a critical condition. So in such a patient, surgery should not be delayed. So you must immediately send for surgery. So surgery in the diabetic foot right now is mostly offered when a gangrene or an amputation is required by the patient, which is not right. Surgery must be offered when a callus or ulcer starts before the infection. That is the emerging line of thought, even in the International Working Group of the Diabetic Foot. So at what stage do we get patients now? We talk so much about surgery. So Ganga Hospital, what stage are you getting patients now, sir? We are still getting only 20% of the patients in class 1 and 2. 80% of the patients we are still getting only in class 3 and 4. That is infected or amputation stage. So we would definitely request all our physician friends to refer these patients to earlier to the surgeons. And most of the surgeons, in fact, we have started spreading this knowledge of surgery through the government, in association with the government, through the Padam Padagappam Thittam. So we have started, we have taught these techniques to all of the government surgeons, and in all of the district hospitals, the Padam Padagappam clinics are being started and surgical services are being offered, and surgical offloading techniques are well known to the surgeons themselves manning these hospitals. So similarly, as the diabetic foot can be divided into 4 stages, treatment options in the diabetic foot can also be divided into preventive podiatry, surgical offloading, debridement or reconstructive surgery, and major amputation. Now, all that we need to know is when to do what. So that is going to be the subject of the balance of the talk. So let's take class 1. So remember, class 1 is the foot at risk without any problem. It's a pre-ulcerative foot. So in such a foot, the physician can manage the patient in their own clinic by callus debridement, moisturizing creams, offloading devices, or customized footwear. So customized footwear is the best type of footwear that a patient can get, because it is the best footwear that can maximally reduce the pressure. Pressure is the force per unit area. So best reduction of pressure is got by customized insole, which will be like a 3D or negative of the foot. So that is the modifications that can be done in the insole. The other modifications that can be done is in the outsole. You can have posterior rocker, you can have a rocker bottom outsole, and you can also have an ankle rocker. So you have 2 types of modifications in diabetic footwear. You can have an insole modification and you can have outsole modification. So insole modification, the most important are the arch support, the metatarsal bars, and the heel cup. So these are the most important modifications in the insole. So this is the, for example, this is the metatarsal bar. This is the arch support, which supports the arch, and this is the heel cup. And whenever you have some bony prominences, you can also have small areas of scooping out of that area, so that the deformity there is accommodated in the insole. So a total contact insole is the best type of insole. The MCR insole, where just one small circular bit of foam has been taken out, is no more recommended. So does surgery have an option in class 1 patient? Yes, in very few patients with early diabetic peripheral neuropathy, there will be an added component of compression neuropathy, just like the carpal tunnel syndrome. I know even now there is a lot of debate about whether surgery is really required in compression carpal tunnel syndrome. But please trust me, if you have the chance to see how the nerve is compressed within the carpal tunnel and see the intraoperative finding, everybody will be convinced that carpal tunnel syndrome is best managed not by pregabalin but by release of the compression. So how do you identify the compression neuropathy in these diabetics? Is you tap on the areas of pressure, particularly the posterior tibial, tarsal tunnel, the dorsum of the foot, or the common peroneal tunnel just on the neck of the fibula. These are the 3 areas where compression can occur. So if you tap there and the patient has a distal radiating shock-like or pain sensation, then you can say that there is an element of compression neuropathy. If the patient says there is no such sensation, he will not benefit by nerve release surgery. So here it is an example of common peroneal tunnel. You can see this is the head of the fibula. We have incised there. We are releasing the common peroneal tunnel. So you can see this patient here. So what we are doing here is we have released the nerve. You can see I am stimulating before the common peroneal tunnel, but after the common peroneal tunnel, when we stimulate, you can see the amount of. So there is a conduction block here because of the old compression which has been released. See, before the tunnel, no stimulation, but when you stimulate after the tunnel, there is a good jumping of the muscles. So you can see that the compression has caused a conduction block in that area. So this was done for this patient. He came during the COVID time. You can see young juvenile diabetic, acute motor loss. He came with acute foot drop. So all we did was what we showed in the previous video. In 2 years later, you can see that he is walking with recovery of the foot drop. We have not done any tendon transfer. We have only done a common peroneal tunnel release. So class 2, we will go to the ulcerated foot. So what is the recommendation? The recommendation is to use a knee-high, non-removable offloading device. That is the gold standard, the total contact cast. It is the first choice. Second choice is removable knee-high or ankle-high offloading device. But the most important thing I want you to notice here is, in a patient with diabetes, this is in the clause number 4, and a neuropathic plantar forefoot or midfoot ulcer, do not use and instruct the patient not to use conventional or standard therapeutic footwear as offloading treatment to promote healing of the ulcer. Footwear is not recommended in active ulcers. When you have active ulcer, you must either use a TCC or you must use a removable cast boot. If the patient is not accepting both, then you must go for surgery. So offloading can be either external offloading, such as total contact cast, it heals the wound, or it can be internal offloading, called surgical offloading. The advantage is, one, the patient compliance is 100% because he cannot take off that offloading method. Once surgery is done, it is done. It heals the ulcer and it also prevents the recurrences because the biomechanics are being corrected. Whereas in a total contact cast, as soon as the patient removes the cast, the biomechanical problem will recur and there is a high chance that the patient will again get the ulcer. So surgical offloading, according to the site of the ulcer, there are many types of surgery. But the most important need to note is grade 2 ulcers, the minor 2 ulcers, the forefoot ulcers under the metatarsal heads, the midfoot ulcer, and the hindfoot ulcer or heel ulcer. So these are the most important areas where the ulcer will occur. So grade 2 ulcer, the most common ulcer in the diabetic foot, 30% of all diabetic foot ulcers are grade 2 ulcers. It can occur either as a plantar hallux. Plantar means on the plantar side. Hallux is the other word for, Latin word for grade 2. And IP joint ulcer, interphalangeal joint ulcer. Or it can be a plantar hallux tip ulcer, subungual, that is below the nail. So these two ulcers are different types of ulcers. So the IP joint ulcer is mostly connected to the tightness of the first MTP joint. It is because of something we call the windlass mechanism. Because of the windlass mechanism, when the patient places the foot on the ground, you'll notice that the grade 2 will flex and it will try to dig into the ground. So this is the reason why this first MTP joint tightness will cause the ulcer on this IP joint area. So early patients can be treated by plantar fasciectomy. Plantar fascia is only one of the components of the windlass mechanism. So some patients, just by doing a plantar fasciectomy under local anesthesia, you can have healing of the ulcer. The only problem is it has a very high recurrence rate. 60% is the recurrence rate in this procedure. But if the patient is careful enough, or if he is a very moribund patient not fit for surgery, you can do this plantar fasciectomy in the clinic itself. But please do it under very sterile conditions. The patient's foot must be washed very well before you put the knife onto the patient's foot. You must not put the knife in a dirty foot. So then what is the gold standard surgical procedure is the Keller gap arthroplasty. Here what we do is we excise the base of the PPX. So all of the intrinsic insertion into the grade toe is taken off. The only problem is there will be a slightly shorter toe because we have taken off about a centimeter of bone here. But there is a 95% chance of healing of this ulcer at 30 months. We have published this in Foot and Ankle International. So here you see the IP, when you take the PPX, this area of bone is excised and the patient has a good movement because this is called a gap arthroplasty. So we have published this in the American Orthopedic Foot and Ankle Society Journal, which is the Foot and Ankle International. And our healing rates were 95% when the patients were with the average follow-up of 30 months. So tip pulses, the answer is because of there is a contracture of the long tendons. This causes the tips of the toes to dig into the ground. Because of this, the toes start getting ulcerated at the tip. The answer is a FHL tenotomy. You just have to do a tenotomy of the FHL. This can be done as a closed procedure or as a open tenotomy. The same thing for a minor toes. The posture of the toe becomes a tip to ground contact. Normal contact is pulp to floor contact, but when the intrinsic loss is present, the toe will become a clawed toe and tip will start hitting the ground. Because of this, there is very less cushioning at the tip of the toe. The toe is likely to get ulcerated very soon. Earlier, we used to do tendon transfers, complicated intrinsic reconstruction procedures. You can see here, this is a girdlestone talar transfer done. You can see that the pulp to floor contact is re-established, whereas in the unoperated toes, you can see the tip to floor contact. Now, simpler procedure, just a flexor tenotomy with an 18 gauge or 16 gauge needle. In the clinic itself, under local anesthesia, you can just do a small tenotomy over there. Once that is done, this type of ulcer will heal completely. So forefoot ulcers are ulcers under the metatarsal head. They are mostly associated with tightness of the gastrocnemius and soleus apparatus. So here it is called an equinus contracture. When this equinus contracture occurs, there is a high stress on the forefoot or an increased time of the gait cycle. So when you have a tightness, this can be released either as a TA lengthening or a gastroc-soleus recession. So when we relax that, we get a transfer of the load from the forefoot to the hindfoot. You can see pre-op, most of the load is in the forefoot. Post-op, part of the load has come to the hindfoot. Numerically, if you see, forefoot to hindfoot pressure ratio reduces from 2.7 to 1.3. This can also be combined with distal metatarsal osteotomies. Usual osteotomy is a floating osteotomy or a wheel osteotomy. Once you do that osteotomy, that prominent bone alone will just move up a little bit, and that will also help in keeping the ulcer healed. The first metatarsal head ulcer is a very important ulcer because the first metatarsal head is the most important weight-bearing structure in the forefoot. It bears 50% of the load of the forefoot. So the first metatarsal head, we usually prefer not to do a distal osteotomy. There are complicated reasons. The most important reason is the insertion of the peroneus longus into the base of the first metatarsal. So we prefer always to do a proximal osteotomy. You can also do tendon transfer procedures such as this Jones transfer. This is a static claw correction procedure. This is usually combined with a PL to PB transfer, that is peroneus longus to peroneus brevis transfer. So you can get good healing of the ulcers when you do tendon transfer procedures or metatarsal osteotomies of the first metatarsal. Now coming to the midfoot ulcer. Midfoot ulcer is nearly always due to Charcot midfoot collapse. When you have a midfoot collapse, you'll always have a midfoot ulcer. So when you have a midfoot ulcer, you can diagnose that the patient has a midfoot collapse without even taking an X-ray. But X-ray is always mandatory in all diabetic foot patients. So what is the recommended foot views that you must take when you see a diabetic foot patient is standing, weight-bearing, anteroposterior and lateral views. So what do you see in that lateral view? You must see whether the long axis of the talus is in parallel to the long axis of the first metatarsal. Here you can see the first metatarsal is like this. The long axis of the talus is downwards. So it means that a collapse has happened here. Whereas the normal foot of the same patient, this is the right and this is the left. Normal patient has a parallel long axis of the talus and first ray. This is called a Meary's angle. So when you do, you can see here, again, there is a Meary angle that is formed. The objective of the surgery is to reconstruct the Meary's angle. So if you see here, this type of surgery is usually recommended for unstable midfoot corrections. Whereas sometimes you will see patients with a fused midfoot. So this was an old Charcot collapse. You see that the hind foot has collapsed, forefoot has moved upwards, rocker bottom deformity with a bony exostosis in the plantar side. So here you can just do an exhaustectomy, which will allow good healing of the ulcer. So here you can see through medial approach, we are just excising this exostosis here. So once you excise the exostosis, this is a different patient. Exostosis has been excised, you'll get a good healed ulcer. So heel ulcers, now you're moving on to heel ulcers. The usual saying is heel ulcers are the most difficult ulcers to heal. So here, you see here, this was one of our early patients, heel ulcer. We grafted, very happy, sent home, but the patient has come back with the same ulcer. So what is happening here? So when you put these patients onto the pedobarogram, you will notice that nearly all of the load is on the heel. So why does this occur? This occurs because of the loss of the Achilles tendon mechanism. So whenever you have the Achilles tendon contracture, you will have loading of the forefoot. When you have paralysis or rupture of the Achilles tendon, you will have loading of the hind foot. See here, this is a young 11 to 12-year-old girl, fell down in the latrine, had an unrecognized Achilles tendon injury. The wound was sutured, brought 2 months later to us by her father saying that she is limping while walking. When we put her onto the pedobarogram, you'll notice that she has a calcaneal gait. The entire load is only in the calcaneum. There is no forefoot loading at all. So we have done an Achilles tendon repair, and you'll see that gradually loading will return to the forefoot. So this takes about 8 to 10 months. So in heel ulcer patients, you must heal the ulcer by a small flap procedure and then proceed to do an reconstruction of the Achilles tendon. There are various methods. You can do interposition graft. You can do tendon transfers. See, and all of them, do they really work? You can see the same patient 11 months later has return of forefoot loading. We have also published this in JPRAS, that is the Journal of the British Plastic Surgery Association. However, in some patients, the calcaneum will be in such a way that you cannot do any reconstructive procedure. In such patients, the only option is to fuse the ankle. Once you fuse the ankle, it cannot move up and down. The whole foot becomes rigid and weight will be distributed evenly between the forefoot and the hind foot. So now coming on to class 3, which is the infected ulcer with a lot of purulence and necrosis. So here, when we have a purulent and necrotic ulcer, the most important step is debridement of this ulcer. So a debridement must be very radical and it must be just like a excision of the tumor. So once you have a very clean base after the debridement, you can do a split skin grafting, you can do local flaps, or you can also do free tissue transfer to heal the ulcer. Next, we move on to the ischemic ulcer. Ischemic ulcers can be either suprapopliteal ulcers or infrapopliteal ulcers. Nearly 80% of these ulcers are being treated by interventional vascular procedures now. Very few bypass procedures are being done. Even the vascular surgeons themselves have moved on to interventional radiology. It is really giving good results. We are also able to do interventional or free flap procedures also after revascularization. Now, the last is class 4 ulcer, when the patient comes with a critical foot. The most important reason why we must recognize this class 4 foot is because of not only the threat to life, but also the futility of salvage. See, the idea of salvaging any diabetic foot is to get back independent, painless, weight-bearing walking. However, if you recognize that such functional salvage is not possible, then there is no point in making the patient spend a lot of money and healing that wound when he can't walk with that leg. So once you recognize stage 4, it helps us to arrive at a quick decision on a major amputation. minimizes the wastage of both the limited patient and healthcare resources, and improves the patient's quality of residual life, where he spends his remnant life at home rather than from jumping from hospital to hospital trying to heal an ulcer that cannot be healed. For example, this is a patient with a heel ulcer, a very bad septic arthritis. You can notice here a fracture of the calcaneum, infection extending into the ankle. Such a patient is better to get amputated.
Sir, சொல்லிட்டீங்க. So thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Please, all of you, listen that a spoon of prevention is better than a pound of cure. You heard well that when it is referred much earlier, we can prevent more complicated problems. Now we'll move on to the next session, Heart and Diabetes, by our legend, Dr. Sivagadaksham from Chennai. He needs no introduction. So you can share your screen, sir.
Yes, madam. No, 1 minute. Can you see, madam?
No, sir, screen has not come.
Oh, right, 1 minute. Yeah. Has it come, madam?
இல்லைங்க sir.
Share பண்ணிட்டேனே.
So கீழே share option போய் போட்டீங்களாங்க sir?
Share போட்டேனே. No, I will try it again.
Got it, sir. Now it is coming.
Visible now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
வந்துருச்சுங்க சார். இது ஸ்லைட் ஷோ வந்ததுன்னா பரவாயில்ல.
Yes, ma'am. You are getting it?
Getting, sir.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much for making me a part of this talk. It was really interesting to hear to the other specialists also. And you are going to listen to a routine lecture now, because all of us know when diabetes is not controlled properly, they all end up with us, with a cardiologist. The reason is very simple, because diabetes is a cardiovascular disease. I still remember Professor Sam Moses used to say in 1976-77, diabetes is a two-in-one disease. It is a metabolic and vascular disease. And several years later, the concept of multi-organ disease has been introduced, and Reagan introduced what is called the metabolic syndrome. If you look at all these things, it is one disease which predisposes to, and the latest is not even metabolic syndrome, the latest is CKM, cardiac kidney metabolic disease. So what is it due to? The entire thing, if you look at it, it is all because of one pathophysiology in the body, obesity, which can lead on to diabetes, which can lead on to hypertension, which can lead on to chronic kidney disease. So this is what is now being focused all over the world as CKM, or cardiac kidney and metabolic disease. This was postulated to us 50 years back by our teachers as metabolic and vascular disease. Now we go to the next one, and cardiovascular disease is prevalent in type 2 diabetes mellitus. And what is the prevalence rate? If you look at this chart, this shows stroke as 7.6%, myocardial infarction 10%, angina 15%, heart failure 14.5%, and coronary artery disease about 20%. And overall, 32% of people are affected with cardiovascular diseases or peripheral vascular diseases when they have diabetes. So if diabetes is not controlled, this is the problem that we are going to face. And the commonest form that people come to us is coronary artery disease, which is a direct result of atherosclerosis of medium-sized vessel. Similarly, you have peripheral arterial diseases, the effects of which we saw in the previous lectures, how ischemic limbs can manifest, how severe the problems can be. Now, today, patients live longer. When patients live longer, one of the causes that they come to a cardiologist is with features of cardiac failure. Cardiac failure occurs in 10% of people with above the age of 70 years. And in diabetic people, the heart failure is rampant, especially more so in ladies. 1 in every 6 to 7 patients of type 2 diabetes mellitus can end up with cardiac failure. MI and stroke is relatively less. And when patients come to us, when you ask them with a cardiac problem, when they come to us, do you have diabetes? The answer is no, nobody in my family has had diabetes, but they will be surprised to see that this is the first time it is being diagnosed, or only during this heart attack. At that time itself, if you take an HbA1c, it will be above 9. So that means these people have not been diagnosed to have diabetes, because diabetes and hypertension are usually called silent killers. They silently come to the patient. I always tell patients that if you have a problem, then it is one of the problem of one of the organs being affected. If the target organ has been affected, then they come with symptoms. But the best thing is to find them out before they develop any of the symptoms. And if you look at the prevalence of subclinical coronary artery disease in type 2 diabetic patient, it is very common in South Asians. It is a significant amount of coronary artery disease, wherein more than 50% stenosis is found in coronary angiogram, occurs in about 2/5 of the patient. 41% of the patient can have this. And coronary artery calcium today, which is kept as a marker to diagnose coronary artery disease, occurs in about 66% of patients. Asymptomatic coronary artery disease in diabetes is, as I have told you, it occurs anywhere between 10 to 47%. The patient will be asymptomatic. Then how do we find out? We'll come to it now. ADA in asymptomatic patients, ADA 2020 recommendation was routine screening for coronary artery disease is not recommended, as it does not improve outcomes as long as atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease are treated. So when do you call them? Only if they have signs and symptoms of associated vascular disease, carotid bruit, transient ischemic attack, coagulation pain, or symptoms of peripheral arterial disease, or electrocardiographic abnormalities. But do we diagnose without all these symptoms in any of the patient? The answer is yes. When they come, majority of patients today come with for a routine health checkup. In the routine health checkup, when the echocardiogram and the blood test and the ECG are normal, you cannot pronounce them as normal, because tomorrow they may have a myocardial infarction. Then how do you categorize them? You categorize them as very high risk, and moderate risk. What is very high risk in a patient with diabetes? Patients with diabetes and established cardiovascular disease, that is, they already have symptoms of coronary artery disease, either in the ECG or in the echocardiogram or in the biochemical parameters like NT-proBNP or drop eye in the acute coronary artery setting, acute coronary syndrome setting, or a high-risk patient is diabetes mellitus of a duration of more than 10 years, definitely you should investigate them. And moderately high-risk patient, where majority of our patient population will come in young patients less than 35 years, type 2 or type 2 diabetes patients more than less than 50 years, or diabetic duration of less than 10 years without other risk factors. The other risk factors, we all know the common risk factors. If the patient comes with diabetes, we ask them, is he a smoker? The number one risk factor, diabetes, obesity, or family history of coronary artery disease. If the patient has any one of the risk factors, he again comes into moderate risk, and then he has to be investigated. When do you suspect cardiovascular disease in your patient with type 2 diabetes? This is a recommendation by the European Society of Cardiology and European Society of Diabetes. What did they say? Routine assessment microalbuminuria is indicated to identify patients at risk of developing renal function or at high risk of future cardiovascular disease, class 1B. Very, very highly indicative. Every patient, diabetic patient, we should check for microalbuminuria, which in most of your forums you express it, madam. So microalbuminuria testing is very, very essential. A resting ECG is indicated in patients with diabetes mellitus diagnosed with hypertension or suspected CVD. And these are the two are the class 1 indication. But calcium score has been added today. And if the calcium score is more than 100, you should definitely ask if the patient is symptomatic. You should ask for a treadmill test and go in for a coronary angiogram, either CT guided coronary angiogram or a regular coronary angiogram. But if the calcium score is more than 400, it is mandatory that you do a treadmill test and then take him up for, even if he is asymptomatic, you should take him up for an angiogram. So these are the routine things. If you come to carotid ultrasound intima media thickening, it is only classified as class 3A recommendation. Now, risk score model, this is what each one of the physicians can follow very easily in our clinical settings. What is the risk score model for assessment of coronary artery disease in an asymptomatic patient with type 2 diabetes? Because day in and day out, patients will come to us. Some people come with real disease. Some people come with a fear whether they have got a problem or not. Unique clinical score designed to predict the risk of significant coronary artery disease in asymptomatic patients. It was found by Park et al. In 2015. And it is very easy that we should have this. There is a scoring point. The one is for age, which we are going to ask the patient, the gender, the duration of diabetes. We have already stressed about 10 years, more than 10 years, they come under the high risk category. Hypertension, if it is associated, because diabetes, many studies, it is 40 to 45%, it is associated with hypertension, smoking, or previous history of smoking, family history of premature coronary artery disease, as I already told, previous history of stroke, then the ratio of total cholesterol to high-density lipoprotein, HDL cholesterol, if it is more than 3. Now, each one has got a scoring. And if you look at the score, the total range is 0 to 17. When it is below 3, you can call it as low-risk group. When it is 4 to 6, it is intermediate risk group. And the high-risk group is anything above 7. So if a patient has got, say, the duration of diabetes is more than 10 years, he gets 1. Most of them have associated hypertension, they get 1, 3. Already it is 3, and they should come under low risk group. And if there is any family history, then it goes on to 4. And most importantly, we look at the lipid profile and give them a score of whether the total cholesterol by HDL cholesterol is more than 3 to 4.3, it is 1, and above 4.3, it is 2. Similarly, if the score is above 7, they should be told that there is a high suspect for associated cardiovascular disease, and we have to investigate them further. Asymptomatic type 2 diabetes, we should not leave them as it is. We have to do a CAD risk model. We have already told about the low risk, intermediate, and high risk group. And if it is a high risk group, the CAD probability is 57%, 5-year cardiac rate is 26%, and 5-year major cardiac event is 5.5%. Either a CT coronary angiography or a myocardial perfusion imaging, or straight away you can go in for a coronary angiogram, which is less time consuming, and therefore it is easy for the patient. Is CAD score a helpful tool for clinical practice? The answer is definitely yes. Then comes the autonomic neuropathy. In the previous lecture, you listened to what all can happen to the lower limb when the patient develops a peripheral neuropathy. Now, the patient develops autonomic neuropathy. You can find out that this is one person who has already gone one step into the cardiovascular disease. Now, how do you find whether the patient has got autonomic neuropathy? It is very simple. If you take a person's ECG, routine ECG, if he has slightly irregular RR interval, we call it as what is called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. There will be groups of faster rates followed by groups of slower rate. It is not an abnormality. It is a sign of health, we used to say. So if you have a respiratory sinus arrhythmia, it is a sign of health. Suppose he is a diabetic patient and you get a regular RR interval with P-wave, regular PQRS complexes. There is no variation with respiration. This is the stage 1 of autonomic neuropathy. That means this patient has lost the autonomic response due to diabetes, and therefore his heart rate is a straight one without respiratory variation. In South Asians, although polyneuropathy is less common, prevalence of cardiovascular autonomic neuropathy is very, very high, as in Caucasians. And in patients with type 2 diabetes mellitus, presence of autonomic neuropathy is associated nearly with a twofold increase in the silent myocardial ischemia. And how do you know? Resting tachycardia. They can have, the first one is what I had told you. If the sinus arrhythmia pattern is lost in their ECG, that is the first sign. At itself, they have tachycardia. Diabetes with a young person who has got a resting tachycardia, we should remember that he should be investigated for associated cardiovascular involvement. QT interval prolongation. Reverse dipping in the BP profile. That is, in the night, instead of dipping by 10 to 20%, they can have reverse dipping of more than 10%, or they can even have elevation in the, they do not have elevation in the nighttime blood pressure, and then a phenomenal orthostatic hypotension. Orthostatic hypotension, we can find out in our clinic itself by making the patient first take the check the BP on the table, and then make the patient stand up. After 15 seconds, you record the BP. If there is a fall of more than 20 millimeters of systolic, we should diagnose orthostatic hypotension. And Valsalva maneuver can be trained. They can be tried in patients to find out autonomic neuropathy, but we should be very, very careful when we do a provocative test like Valsalva maneuver. And orthostatic hypotension, I have told. And the next one that would be of relevant would be ankle brachial index to find out if the patient has got peripheral arterial diseases. So if you want me to summarize, what all we have seen so far is, one is the clinical history, diabetes only, what is the duration, does he have associated hypertension, does he smoke along with that, and is there a family history, and then take a fasting lipid profile and check the total cholesterol by HDL ratio. And then look for microalbuminuria if he's a diabetic, and look for peripheral arterial disease, and also for autonomic neuropathy by way of checking the resting heart rate if there is a tachycardia or loss of sinus arrhythmia. If all these things or many of these things are positive, there is a high chance that this patient is going to go in for a cardiovascular problem with an innocent asymptomatic diabetes mellitus. And we are not going into the treatment modality, because today you have got wonderful drugs which can control all the 3 parts of CKM, cardiac, kidney, and metabolic component, namely the GLP-1RA and the glyphosins. These things are handy, and they can prevent the complications or take care of all the 3 complications of diabetes. I think we will stop here because of time constraint, and we will take up any important question that is coming up. Over to you, madam.
So you can stop sharing the screen, sir, so that we'll have the...
Yes, madam.
Yes.
You can do.
You can ask the participants if they have any questions, madam.
Doctors in heart and diabetes or in diet or in GDM, any doubts, please ask. So one question from the chat box, as mentioned in your first slide, how common diabetes and obesity together?
I think madam is a better person to answer. Today it is called globesity because
Yes, it is
obesity is
diabetes.
so common. It is become globesity. And if you look at the etiology of CKM, the etiology of CKM, that is cardio kidney metabolic disease, is a simple obesity. Because the unused adipose tissue is the root cause of CKM, cardio kidney metabolic disease. And most importantly, this leads on to metabolic syndrome and all the complications. So obesity is very, very rampant to the extent it is called globesity. And if you ask the exact percentage, I think in diabetic people, it's much more common in non-diabetic persons. That's the only answer I can say.
Yes, sir.
Madam?
Rather than saying obesity, we have more of visceral obesity. That's very common. We all may look thin, but we all have visceral obesity.
Yeah, the first speaker was telling about the the UK diabetologist thing. So, and our famous Shashank's statement, thin fat Indian. That means their visceral adiposity is high, even though they look thin. And therefore, their tendency to get metabolic syndrome is very high. And this is what is classically called as a thin fat Indian. Because many why this is important is many patients come and ask us, sir, I am thin, I don't smoke. Why did I get a heart attack? This is the reason. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
So, Dr. Srihari, you can unmute. You can unmute. Dr. Srihari.
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Shivakadaksham.
Yes, sir. Please.
My humble pranam to you, Dr. Sundaramurthy, pulmonologist.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Student. Only one question, sir.
Yes, sir. Please.
Does low dose statin and clopidogrel protect the heart?
If they don't, my principle is very simple, sir. If the patients do not have any of the risk factors, do not give anything. Just advise them to keep on to, as Srihari was telling, ask them to walk every day. I almost advise the same thing that you used to advise. When you get up in the morning, out of 24 hours, just spend 1 hour for yourself. My prescription is different. I tell them, you walk for 40 minutes and stay quietly without the telephone for 20 minutes. If you can do this one meditation like him, please go ahead. Otherwise, at least without the telephone, you sit quietly. But if the patient has got any of the risk factors, definitely, and especially diabetes with hypercholesterolemia, you will have to give them statin. There is no doubt about it. You should bring the LDL cholesterol to less than 100, sir, today. There is no doubt in every diabetic.
Sir, menopausal women ku podnuma vendama?
Yes.
Yes, madam is there.
Diabetic the drugs pota better vendama?
So,
menopausal women with diabetes, should you have to give statin, he is asking.
Sir, actually, as sir said, if they have any abnormality, we can go first. If they're all right with all the lifestyle modifications, we need not go for anything. Many menopausal women are hale and healthy.
If the
They are selfish enough to take care of themselves 1 hour. As Dr. Srihari rightly said, be selfish and spend the first 1 hour for you.
Okay, fantastic. Sir, Dr. Shivakadaksham, I should thank you for recalling Professor Sanjeev Bose's statement.
Yes, sir.
It is a metabolic and vascular disease.
Vascular disease.
Give the pranam to him. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello.
Thank you.
Sir, I have a question.
Good evening, madam.
Yes.
Hello.
One by
Can
one.
you hear? Yeah, I'm Dr. Josephine. I have a question regarding a patient.
Yes, Josephine.
Yeah, ma'am, I want to know how, now, for example, patients those who are diabetic, how many years later do we need to do a prophylactic angiogram? Some patients come and ask, I have occasionally chest pain. Some patients do not have, but they want to screen it, like when they are working abroad or they come yearly checkup. One is that. Another one is the patients those who are having already diagnosed the diabetic and they also have CAD, they are on a dual antiplatelet. And how can we reduce this dual platelet? Can we come to single antiplatelet, and how much dose can we reduce and how often can we reduce with the reports?
So
Madam,
it's
more
all
than
yours, sir.
angiogram, they ask for nuclear scan, madam. More than angiogram, they ask for cardiac nuclear scan.
So you have to answer, sir, whether they need an angiogram, she's asking.
A patient comes, I told you, madam, even if they are asymptomatic, do an echo, ECG, and a treadmill test. If the treadmill is negative, their chance of having a coronary problem is less than 86%. Suppose chance is less than 86%. There is only 14% false negative test in treadmill. Suppose the patient has been a diabetic for more than 10 years, just do a CT calcium score, which costs 1,500 to 2,000 rupees only. If the CT calcium score is less than 400, do not make him afraid that he is going to have a cardiac problem. But if it is more than 400, kindly do an angiogram. This is the regular protocol that we should follow. And more so if the treadmill is positive. If the treadmill is negative, only for his satisfaction we have to do.
Okay.
Dual platelets.
The dual platelet dose, whether to reduce?
Dual platelet, 75 milligram of aspirin and 75 milligram of clopidogrel. It is not written anywhere to reduce it. So it is better to give dual antiplatelet drug, and with a statin it is fine. But if the patient is intolerant to aspirin, you can give a statin with a single antiplatelet, namely clopidogrel.
How can we reduce the statin level also, sir? Can we reduce the statin level from
Yes,
40
madam,
mg to...
there is a clear-cut indication, madam. Any patient who has a coexisting disease or acute or chronic coronary syndrome, try to reduce it to below 70 LDL. Once it is found out that it is below 70 every 3 months, then you can start reducing it. Otherwise, keep it in the same level. There are many ACS patients, we start with 40 milligram of rosuvastatin or 80 milligram of atorvastatin. At the end of 3 months, we check. If it comes down to below 100, I reduce it to half the dosage, even though some of the cardiologists do not reduce it. And once it is below 70, I reduce it to quarter the dosage and maintain it. At the end of 6 months, we repeat it. If there is a tendency to increase the dosage. In majority, with the lifestyle modification, the lowered statin dose can itself be continued.
Thank you, sir. Clear explanation.
Dr. Bhavadharani?
Yes.
Yeah, one more doubt. Is the last doubt. What is the role of stem cell therapy in future and oral insulin?
Sir, actually oral insulin is on the pipeline under investigation, and it is going to come for India also. Okay. Stem cell therapy, again, it is again on research only. Okay. They are trying.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Good evening, madam. My question to Bhavadharani, madam.
Yes.
Madam, as you said, at 8 weeks we do postprandial. If it is 110 to 119, we don't need to start metformin.
Yes, exactly. At 8 weeks, if the postprandial, it is not with glucose, if the postprandial is between 110 to 119, because 120 is positive for GDM and 110 is the fetal renal threshold. Once it crosses this, the fetal pancreas will start secreting insulin. This hyperinsulinemia is irreversible. Once ignited, it will be as long as it is inside the mother, it will steal glucose from the mother. Soon after it is born, it will go for recurrent hypoglycemia. When it grows also, we are seeing C-peptide level in children. They are having hyperinsulinemia, having more appetite, putting on weight, obesity, and what all sir said before getting the CKM. That is that metabolic syndrome features, all that they get it. So you start metformin at 8th week to bring down the blood sugar less than 110 before 10 weeks. So that at 11th week, the fetal pancreas is not exposed to high blood sugar of more than 110.
If it is more than 200, we straight away we can start insulin.
If it is more than 120, it is GDM.
120.
And if it is more than 200, it is you have to start medical nutrition therapy along with insulin.
Okay, okay. If it is 120 also, you can start on insulin.
Yes.
At 8
Insulin
weeks.
is the drug of choice in pregnancy
Yeah.
because it will not
Okay.
cross the placenta.
Okay. In PHCs, usually we do GCTR by with
Sir?
75 gram glucose. In
Pardon?
PHCs,
Ah.
in primary health centers, in government setup,
Ah.
we usually do GCT with 75 gram of glucose.
Yes. That is
If
deduction.
it is more than 140, If it's more than 140 only, then we go to insulin.
See, please
That's what I'm asking.
understand what you are doing with glucose is deduction of diabetes.
Okay.
What I am
Okay.
saying is prediction of diabetes.
Prediction.
You
Okay.
are predicting that this lady is going to get diabetes and you are starting on metformin so that if you do that glucose test at first trimester, that is 12 weeks, she will not have GDM. This 110 to 119 is prediction. And at the first trimester, if you give glucose and see, that is screening.
Okay, madam. Okay.
This is prediction, that is deduction.
Okay, madam.
This is the first time 12 weeks is with glucose, whereas at 8 weeks is just postprandial after mixed meal.
Okay. Thank you.
And actually, this is by Professor Dr. my mentor Seshia. He wants, because now as Dr. our cardiologist was saying, enormous obesity. Not like before we are saying 1 in 10, like 1 in, when the schools, if you say only one child will be obese, we'll be pointing out. Now all are obese. We have to point out who is lean. It has come to that level, and all parameters what sir was saying is so common. We are now going and doing that C-peptide levels. So we are seeing in children, pregnant ladies, and also the adolescent girls, it's so high. These are the ones who are going to get all the problems. And the main thing is they are going to transmit from generation to generation. So only we are saying in the pregnancy, you please see at 8 weeks and prevent GDM. And this if we do in successive generations, then only we can. Our mentor's aim is diabetes-free generation. That is NCD-free generation by 2047. We attained freedom on 1947 and diabetes-free generation by 2047.
Madam, our last question, Keklama, if you don't mind.
Yeah, telling sir.
Any country without diabetes today? Any country in the world? No diabetes at all.
As far as I know, no, sir. Maybe in tribals where they live on natural food and they don't eat, where there is no light, and that is in the evening, if they don't take any food like how we were doing before the invention of light. If you can find some tribal people and go test, maybe they are not having. But as far as we have seen, the incidence is less in hilly regions because their movement is much more than us.
Madam, one more additional point to Dr. Sundaramurthy is there are 5 zones in the world called the blue zones. If you take the Wikipedia and read about blue zones, the blue zones are present all over the world. One is extreme in Japan, and on the other extreme is in the Loma Linda Island in the California, and in the center it is in Greece and Italy. All these 5 areas, people live longer than 100 years. So it is called blue zones where people live longer. And they went and researched what is it, the pattern of life that they lead. The first pattern is, as Madam said, they are all hilly region. Even for a small thing, they will have to walk up and down. The second and most important thing which we do not do now, we are all addicted to cell phones. There they meet in the evening, have a cup of tea or have a cup of wine. Then they talk with each other, spend time. And third and most important thing is they eat fruits and vegetables which are grown locally. So these are the three characteristics of people who live longer in these three areas of the world called the blue zones. I think we should follow them. So they have to walk, they have to get their food, even to get a tea, can get together. Most of them spend time evening talking with each other. All these things, social condition is very, very essential for living longer.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, madam.
As Dr. Srihari said, that mindfulness, what he said, when he is stress-free, even if he is given just 500 calories, he is hale and healthy, bulky, with more, whereas the other one given 700, because he is more of stress, he is not able to have a healthy body.
So I like to comment here, madam. What I have realized is that only human beings have diabetes. None of the other animals have. It is because we corrupted our food. And then second animal to get diabetes is the dogs, because we started taming them. And now cats are also getting diabetes. Apart from these three species, no other animal has diabetes.
Because they are living naturally.
They live naturally.
Sir, how much extra calories needed in second and third trimester? What is it, sir? I didn't listen properly. How much extra calories needed during second and third trimester of pregnancy? Sir said, I didn't listen properly.
That is, in the first trimester, you don't need to increase. Second, you just increase 300.
Second,
and in the third trimester, the growth is more, so increase by 412, almost up to 450. Simple calculation, but the main thing is you have to split. Instead of taking 2 or 3 large meals, split the same spread into 6. That is in between. So that there will not be any steep rise. But in the classes, we'll be taking in the detail. I just gave an outline. Mainly, I concentrated on the medical nutrition therapy and exercise, which forms the basis, main treatment for because all these, whatever it may be, it is TDM or non-communicable diseases, or are called as, need not call as non-communicable. It is all lifestyle disorders. If you can change your lifestyle to olden days, or as such, like our blue zone, definitely we can bring down and we can be diabetes free also.
Thank you, madam. I'm leaving.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Enjoyed all the discussions, madam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Anand, if there is no more doubts, we can close the session, or anybody having any doubt, please ask.
Madam?
Yes?
Hi, madam. I think there are no more questions. I think I have the chat. So a very good discussion to start with today, madam. So now I request our CGP State Office Bearer, Dr. Mahavan Mohan, to give his vote of thanks and give his concluding remarks. Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Madan, you have to unmute.
Good evening, everyone. It is indeed a very exhaustive session on diabetes. Thank you all the speakers for their sharing their knowledge to all our members who have joined and gained knowledge. Thank you, Bhavdharani madam. It was an amazing session. You gained a lot of insights of diabetes from this CME. Hope the members who joined this fellowship course gets benefited by your enlightened talks, and all the other 3 speakers who have given the talks today, especially Dr. Madhu Periyasamy, Dr. Srihari, and Dr. Sivakadaksham sir. All have given their shared their experience and knowledge to the members who have joined the session. It was very enriching session for us. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you all the members who have joined. Thank you IMA TNSB, and thank you CGP for organizing this wonderful session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you all the delegates and faculties and the IMA office bearers. Chandramohan.